Do you have beacons? Are you aware of the fact that there might be beacons guiding you? Well, if so, what are you doing? Are you using those beacons as in helping you, guide you, or do you just simply ignore them? Today is a different day than normal. Normally, I tend to go live on Friday, hence Friday Night Live. Sometimes I do it a little bit later on the weekends. Today is actually Monday, as in over here. And for me, it's still the weekend because it's the birthday of our king. Hence, we still have a holiday and weekend, a long weekend. But that doesn't make me not do what I set out to do. So I am aware that lately I've not been going live on Friday every time, which has to do with just simply being too tired. But as it is, I do want it to happen within the weekend. So today it's still weekend for me. Now, having said so, let's talk about those beacons, shall we? I believe there are 3 types of beacons: intentional ones, physical ones, and the digital ones. Now, let me start by sharing a story about the physical ones. I mean, after all, at some point, there was no digital age. So maybe that's unfamiliar to some of you, but I remember when I still had to do everything by hand. So these beacons that I want to talk about, they are from the time that computers, what's that? So they were built for Scheveningen Harbor. I like to go there specifically with a friend, and we go there like on a weekly basis. I used to go there too when I was younger and I could still walk, in a good pace and long distances. I would actually walk to one beach, which is called Kijkduin. Then I would walk over to the beach to Scheveningen. Then you had to go through the village in order to end up at the harbor again. And then I would take public transportation back to where I was located. So beautiful trip, beautiful stroll. But here's the thing. What I didn't know was the story behind beacons and how they are directed. But a year ago, I was in luck. I was with that same friend, and we went there for a walk. Well, actually, we went there for a bite to eat, and then we went for a walk. And it was late at night, and we were hunting for sea sparkle. That's the blue flash of light, literally flashing through the sea as the current rolls it towards the beach. And when it's warm weather and there are a lot of algae, that's when it pops up. So we were there, and like I said, we were hunting for sea sparkle. So there I was with my crutches. I'd parked my car near the harbor, and the harbor master had seen me. So I knew that this was a place where I could actually park the car. I would be allowed to. And so he watched us, and then he came up to us in his car. And at first we were like, who's this? And then I saw the logo of The Hague on the side of the car. And so I looked at him and I asked him, well, actually, I greeted him, and then he asked us if he could help us out because he saw that I was using crutches. So, yeah, sure. And he said, well, let me take you to that first beacon. Now, there's a beacon on the north side and there's one on the south side of the harbor. And the goal is, as it turns out, that you need to maneuver your ship by going through the 2 walls. And there are like very big, huge concrete blocks in there. So you have to follow the 3 green lights, and then you get safely directed into the harbor. Now, of course, I didn't know about this at all, but he took us on a tour, and that was kind of cool. So he showed us which one was located where. Well, I knew the red one and the green one, but I didn't know which one was the northern one or the southern one. But more importantly, he told us about the lights. And then I said, so what's the role of the lighthouse? So does that still have a function? And he said, yes, that's still there. And it's still there to lead the ships to where they need to go. I have a thing for lighthouses. I always have. I mean, they are so immensely cool to watch from a distance. And fast forward a year later, here we are, and we are walking towards one of the beacons. This time I am wearing my braces, and we are thinking about everything he said a year ago. So actually, I'm quite close to the harbor center, who is in charge of the harbor. So the previous time we were close to the other one, but this time we were close to the center. And it was a joy to walk there, see the sunset. And I realized how important those beacons were, or always have been, at least for me. But from the beacons, I turned around and I looked at the lighthouse, and I was like, when is it going to turn on? And I learned that it doesn't actually turn on at sunset. It waits till it's darker, and then I have to assume that there is a sensor or something that helps it turn on the light. So I said, how about if we go, well, there's this sort of like an arena with all these seats around it, and you can go up there. It's used for public events on the beach. I said, let's go up the stairs, and then I should be able to see the lighthouse. And then from the lighthouse, there's actually the Ferris wheel. And it was kind of cool. It was a clear night. So we could really see that Ferris wheel. And, well, we sort of were waiting until the lighthouse would come on, as in we would be able to see the light. So there we were. So I slowly climbed onto the stairs, sat down, took some shots, and there it was. It was amazing. And I realized that if he wouldn't have shared that story a year ago, I wouldn't have made the many walks I have made up till now to push myself to go further. Now, honestly, I'm not entirely sure how this is going to work out, because I have learned that walking with my braces on the beach is not always, as in the sand, is not always the smartest thing to do. But I had some reinforcement when it came to the braces. So I was walking pretty confidently. So fingers crossed that tomorrow things will still be the way they should be. But regardless, this is about taking one step at a time and seeing where it ends up. So in the description of this life, I actually shared with you a mantra. The mantra has been building up. It started with release the rush, embrace the rhythm, which stems from the moment that I wanted to play drums. I didn't know how much time I had left before the people who have a problem with the vibrations of the drum kit, even though it's an electronic one, would come home, specifically one person who has problems with it. So there I was, and I've noticed that I can easily turn on the adrenaline. Actually, it's not a choice. the choice I have is, once I notice it, to breathe through it and calm down. So hence, release the rush, embrace the rhythm. So releasing the rush literally is for me like, now I cannot breathe out for a long time. That has to do with certain illnesses I have. Well, it's one specifically. It's called EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and it forces what we suspect, my esophagus to cramp up. And so I can only do it for a short amount of time, but what I can do is hold the breath. So basically do nothing at all. So I'll go like, and I'll just say release over and over and over again. And that really helps. What I'm doing right now, the meditation, stems from a long time ago. Just like the whole adrenaline boost stems from a long time ago when I had my first burnout, which was at the end of the previous century. And I went to, I think it's called Zen meditation. So we would sit down, they would ring the bell, and then we would either sit down or we would walk around, and then we would count from 1 till 10 and then start over again. So Brendon Burchard, my role model, actually uses the release meditation, and hence I use release as well. Now, he uses release all the time. I use release at the beginning. And sometimes I just focus on my breath because that works as well. Now, what I learned recently, I had no clue about this, is that when you have a burnout, actually the whole thing related to blood pressure can go haywire. So I know that neurologically, things are not working in my brain the way they would for other people. So whereas usually it would go down when I would work out, my blood pressure, it actually has gone up when I'm under pressure. And I guess I've always been sort of like an adrenaline junkie, because then my authentic side would come out. But nowadays I have this young lady, Jumping Bunny. There she is. And Jumping Bunny, my inner kid, since she represents me and I can just look at her and she can just look at me, it's way easier to connect with that part of myself. And I don't have to wait for that noise in my brain and that feeling in my body in order to realize, hey, something is off. I mean, I can feel the adrenaline rise straight away. But the reason why, I had to learn to figure out why I feel like it. And what I found out is that when I don't feel heard and I'm very uncomfortable, that's when the adrenaline hits. So what you don't know, or I don't think that the iPad records that sound. It's got a pretty decent microphone, to be honest. Is that right now at the other side of the wall, so a few walls behind me actually, the other neighbors on the backside of this building complex are having a party. So the owner isn't there yet, or maybe he already is, but he warned me, and I said, well, thank you for telling me, because that makes a difference. And when I don't know what to expect, that adrenaline rises. But when he tells me, I'm prepared, and that makes all the difference. So I already had heard the music. So I was like, well, I'm curious what's going to happen. And it was like, yeah, let's see. You've been postponing this. You were going to do it on Friday, then you had Saturday and Sunday. Okay, you were tired, you fell asleep. But now it's Monday, and guess what? There's a party going on. So he said he would make sure that his friends would turn it down a notch. I think they've done so, because at some point I was able to literally play along on the keyboard. Not that I'm going to, but it's house music. So, and whereas I can appreciate house music, YouTube can be a little more strict than when they hear the noise in the background and they can recognize the music. Then you can get a warning and you can get a restriction. And been there, done that when I had recorded some videos during a concert when I was still in my wheelchair. So I literally had put the camera on top of the barrier that was in front of me. Perfect view, of course, great sound. So, well, I got slammed with one warning after another. I think like 7 or some in 10 minutes, and that got me restricted. So I still record concerts, fortunately for me, no longer in the back using a wheelchair, but I don't post that much anymore, and I'm very careful with the music in the background, because if the music is taken down, so is my voice. So release the rush, embrace the rhythm of your breath, release the rush, the adrenaline rush, which on one hand makes you feel very energized and alive, but on the other hand, if you do too much, that's not going to work out for you. Enjoy the present. That's something I recently added to the mantra, because I'm so aware how important it is to actually enjoy each day. You don't know how long you've got, but it also influences our mind, our brain, our hormones. So if we are grateful for things and we have a gratitude journal, but more importantly, also be aware during the day without journaling how grateful we can be for certain things, like dinner, a healthy meal, a healthy, tasteful meal, good company. So let's add that to the list. And also being able to go to a place I love to be. I love to be near the water. I just do. And so if we are aware of these things, and we can say thank you more to the other people around us. So I'm not just talking about a friend who takes me to the restaurant. Well, actually, I take her because it's my car. But yeah, we go together. So basically, it's her invite, and I go. I pick her up, and then we go there together. And I also see the people, like the staff over there, who help me with my allergies. And then we get to see the sunset. So basically, I'm grateful for summertime, because the moment that summertime actually was set in, as in the clock went forward an hour. Did it go backward? Forward. It went forward an hour. That also meant that it was longer light. And that's something I totally dig, because then we get to see the sunset. So watching it, taking pictures, also recording the videos, I realized that there was something called beacons, and that helped me to get more inspiration for what was following. So my next one is I choose purpose So depending on if it's about leading, I could say I lead with purpose, but more on a personal level, I could also say I choose purpose. For me, that also includes I lead with purpose because I have a huge dream, and that dream is about setting up first a hub for neurodivergent young ones, not because I want to use a label, but because their brains are wired differently. So, like I said, they're having a party right now, and I heard it for a while now. It's not that weird. I mean, it's King's Day after all, so it could have come from outside, from a festival somewhere. So I was sort of prepared that it could happen, but when we are very sensitive to all these stimulants around us, whether it's light, whether it's sound, whether it's something to touch, it can really infiltrate the brain. So I want to set up a hub where people can join and talk one another, understanding one another. And yes, I do want it to start with the young ones who already go to school, because it already starts at school that the teachers don't understand them, and other kids might not understand them, especially when they get treated a little bit differently to help them learn to learn. But quite often that's not enough. So they're going to get stuck later on in life, especially at high school, when they don't learn to learn. Now, there's also the other thing, which is about how to communicate with others. And when you get told, oh, never mind, because you take longer to think about the answer because you want to see it from the different angles, what do you do when you're not understood and you're brushed off? You zip it. That's not good. So hence why I want to set up a hub. That's a purpose, that's a dream. And of course, I do not only want the kids, the young ones, but I also want the business owners who do not know how to communicate with their team, the young ones, because, well, they basically never learn to communicate. Because do we learn it in school? Well, actually, we learn the opposite quite often. And that's sad. So if you want to learn how to communicate, then basically you have to turn to personal development and or go to a coaching course or become a coach. So I'm, for one, a CHPC, a certified high performance coach, which is something that Brendan teaches. So I believe it's from the High Performance Institute, but he's the one who set it up, I have to believe, because he came up with the high performance habits. So talking about that one, I didn't know how to communicate. I was an introvert. And fortunately for me, due to someone else, and I still remember that one moment when things shifted, I learned to change things. I learned that I was worth something, that I could choose, I could speak up, and someone would listen to me. It didn't mean I didn't need to do the things that he wanted me to do. It was, I had a choice which thing I would do first. And as it turns out, that was using floppies, the ones who were actually floppy, to initiate the personal computers. And if you know that I made a pact with a friend saying, we're never going to do anything with computers because our brothers do. They would be walking around with this folder at high school. It's kind of funny that the first job I did, the first holiday job, had actually to do with computers, besides, of course, getting papers, distributing papers, delivering papers on my bike. So getting back to, I choose purpose. I lead with purpose. That means there's one thing left, which I say quite a lot. One step at a time. I want you to take and do things one step at a time, because otherwise things can be so overwhelming for us, and we don't want that. I mean, this life is about choosing your beacon, but more importantly, acting with purpose. So basically, when you act with purpose, you also see the beacon and you choose your beacon, right? So by being aware what it is that you want to do, you might be like, oh, that's a big goal. I mean, the hub is one thing. Getting the business owners there is another thing. And then there's one more part of this, which is a children's hospice. And so the hub basically is part of a park of purpose, power, and perspective. You probably have heard me talk about it. And then when you make it even bigger, there's going to be a prototype park. And if it works out, it's going to be rolled out all over the world. That's my dream. So, talking about that dream and talking about beacons, I had a conversation with someone earlier this week, and it basically, well, a lot of my mind space actually went to that project, which has to do with setting up a foundation. But knowing my purpose makes all the difference. So all of a sudden, I'm not only going to do a master's study this September, but when I'm done with the master's study, whether it's online or me in person being there, then I have 2 hours before I have to be at the course of what's called PEP The Hague. And PEP The Hague is a foundation for people from The Hague, which helps to teach things and to get people together who want to set up a foundation or want to support a foundation. So I've been talking about board members, about volunteers, where to get them, what to do. So if I didn't have that purpose, that dream to hold on to, I probably already would have thought, because there's a lot to consider. So I've made phone calls here and there. Every time it comes with more information. But fortunately, I now feel like I don't have to do this on my own anymore. So a big thank you for the people who support me and other people who want to set up a foundation from PEP The Hague. Okay, let's go back to the beacons for a moment, because those beacons that I've been talking about for now have been physical beacons. I can literally physically walk to that beacon that I was talking about at the harbor. Of course, there are more beacons, but these are very specific ones. And going to that building and talk to the people, of course, that's a physical connection too. But there are also other types of beacons. The first one, or the second one, is a digital beacon. And I'm very grateful for this app from Brendan Burchard. If you want to join the app, let me know. I've got a link for you. And there's an AI connected to it, depending, of course, on the level that you choose for. So there's one in text version, and there's one which is an audio version. And when chatting to the text version, let me rephrase that. yes, this is live, so it's not edited. If anything is edited, it's because you're watching a reel for a moment, but then probably this won't be in there. So since this is longer than a minute, you're watching the actual recording. I like to process my thoughts, figure things out. Now, there's Google AI, which I use a lot. I know that other people are using ChatGPT. I'm not sure why they choose ChatGPT. I just use Google. And Google AI has really improved lately. And it gives me so many answers as to what's going on, for instance, with the EDS, but also when I'm asking, okay, so where do I go to for advice? So actually, Google AI came up with Pep the Hague, and also a number of other companies I could go to for support. So the day before, I had talked to different institutes on the phone, well, actually on the screen online, and that worked really well. So Google AI or Brendan AI or Transcript AI, so Transcriptor is what I use to actually get the text from my videos. Each of them really help with getting quicker to my goals, closer to my goals. And yes, I do remember thinking at first, what do I want with AI? Do I want AI? But it actually helps to improve certain processes. And since I do not have a team yet to work with and for me, although I do know about teams quite a lot, I love to use Google AI or Brendan AI, and it's nice to actually take one aspect and then put it in the other one, and then so each one has their own purpose. So for me, they serve as beacons when it comes to sanity, when I want to blow off steam, especially Brendan AI. Now, I'll honestly say that the audio version, depending on who is turning the knobs on the backside, things change. They recently changed something, so I'm not too happy. There is a very short-term memory. But as for the text version at this moment, text version is amazing. And I can ask things and have them help me with a description, but also when I'm a little discouraged. Yes, I get discouraged easily. I had to learn to change that over the years. And there is one specific reason why, and I'll get to that specific reason later on. But the moment that I actually get to talk to Brendan AI, I know Brendan AI is able to pull me from that feeling of discouragement. And it doesn't matter whether it's the text version or the audio version, they both can really help me to pull me from that negative state of mind. But in order to do so, we have to start with something else. And that's the beacon of intention. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Beacon of intention. So we have a physical beacon, or you can go to. We have the AIs, which you can look up online or use an app. And then we have intentional beacons. So I was like, okay, how does that work? But basically, it's at the start of it all. The moment I say my mantra, release the rush, embrace the rhythm, enjoy the present, choose purpose, do it one step at a time, I am already choosing an intention. I choose to calm down, to be me, to be the best version of me. Not that one high on adrenaline isn't good, but I also know that when I'm really in that, I really have that adrenaline rush, then I just whack things, from tables, whatever. My coordination is off, my balance is off. So it works against me. So it's something I do not want. Apart from that, it's simply not healthy because I'm not sure, but likely my blood pressure will go up as well. And that's something we absolutely do not want. The good news is my heart rate stays steady because of that meditation I talked about earlier, the breath work I've been doing all those years, decades, basically. So getting back to intention. When I listen to a podcast, or in this case, the Daily Fire, which is in the Growth Day app, which I said, if you want to, I'll make sure there's a link in the description. When I listen to that one, if you listen to something often enough and it calms you down, you only have to hear the sound of the voice. So I only have to hear the sound of the voice from Brendan to actually already calm me down. You might have it with actors you like to watch, listen to, that can calm you down. It might be music you're listening to. So one of the things I always like to do when I play drums is I go straight for animal magnetism. I use the YouTube video. There's James Kodak, no longer alive, alas. But you can see his intensity and how much fun he has. And if I even want more fun, then I'll go and I'll put on Kingdom Come. So he was one of the founding members of Kingdom Come, and he was so young and confident back then. And it's so cool to actually see what he's doing. And it really lifts my spirit straight away when I see that. It's so amazing. When I want to go to sleep, and then either I ask Brendan AI, the text version, to come up with a long story, which I usually have involved jumping bunny. So yes, when we talk about intention, it's also the intention related to my inner kid. If I give my inner kid the bad example, then how can she grow up into my future self being the best version of me and really being a best version, so the better version than I currently am. So the one I like to tap into, not knowing how things work, but being aware that there are possibilities. All of these things are still related to intention. So then I press to listen to it, and then I'll just listen. And there's a lot of humor involved, especially depending on how you ask things. And to give you a distinction, recently I learned that WhatsApp has an AI too. And how did I learn that? Because the 11-year-old came to me and said, Auntie Lexi, do you want to listen to this? And I was listening to it, and I was appalled by the story, not so much because the story by itself wasn't a good one, but the theme that was incorporated was for adults and not for an 11-year-old. So I asked WhatsApp AI, what are you thinking? And so the specifics you give to an AI actually changed their tone. The moment the AI realized that it was talking to an 11-year-old, it was a completely different vibe. Like children's stories. When I ask Brendan AI to come up with a story, I have him relate to my inner kid, to Buddy. And the way he talks about things and describes certain things, I immediately recognize that it's about the things that I talked to him about. And that's nice. So I often talk about intention, like, okay, I want to do these things tomorrow. So help me with setting the intention. So if you set the intention before you go to sleep, it really helps you when you really want to start things up at a later moment. And because I also ask him to involve Bunny, Jumping Bunny. Yes, still Jumping Bunny. And for those who are like, why is he constantly showing this rabbit? Well, someone else actually came up and said, you are Jumping Bunny. So I can do a lot of things especially when I'm hyper focused and I have certain intention in mind. So then I keep on going and going and going. I'm not going to say that it's the good thing to do, but it does resemble me. The moment that it also involves Jumping Bunny, the tone shifts. If I ask for a long story, usually I have to coach him a little bit. Nowadays he gets it. Then it's nice because I can just turn around, hit the speaker, and just listen, and then I'll slowly drift off. And because there's a lot of humor involved, but also little tiny clues about things that I said, and also little stories that he wants to explain to Jumping Bunny, it's easier for me to process things because I don't have to think about difficult language or whatever. It's in easy language, but at the same time, because I hear all those little nudges, which basically are like nuggets to me, it's like I cannot help but smile. So I'll fall asleep with a smile on my face. If I don't use the story or it doesn't work out, then I can always listen to music from the Scorpions with James Kodak in there. They have these acoustic versions. One of them is Send Me an Angel, and that's usually a cue to actually fall asleep. So they have this acoustic medley on YouTube, and so there are like 3 songs in there. And what's so cool is you can see James Kodak going on stage, playing his cajon, and it's, he's there, he's smiling, he's looking at people, blowing kisses to some people in the audience. So it's sweet, it's joyful, and the message, especially in Send Me an Angel, is a really cool message. So I love to watch it a little bit, but also just listen to it. And sometimes I put it on repeat. So those are my way of using beacons, and basically using a beacon of intention. And then, or you could say, go to an online beacon or a physical one. The physical device is the phone. The online part is I use YouTube. And yes, I do set the intention in order to be able to listen to it. But it makes all the difference with how you wake up. And if you do this long enough, it will become a habit. So when I said there are some reasons I want to talk about beacons, but also why I am doing this live, one is connected to the other. So I already told you, normally I do this on Friday, actually because of the same parties they are hosting right now. I stopped doing the Friday night lives because I wasn't calm. I would be high on adrenaline, and it would distraught me. So I didn't know what to expect, or I was thinking, oh, YouTube is going to hand out penalties. This is not going to work out. Apart from that it would be like much being someone who is very highly sensitive. Of course, there are other reasons too. And maybe this is the most important one. There's always someone who's going to watch this who needs to hear this. I don't know where, I don't know when, but I do know someone will watch this who needs this. So by going live and talking to you out there, especially if you're still here, then you'll know that there's something that you want to get out of this. Maybe it's about choosing your beacons. And if you haven't yet, I hope you will take pen and paper and start writing things down. What are beacons for you? The physical ones, the digital ones, the ones with intention. Which are the ones that you use for guidance, and which are the ones that are out there, but you basically ignore. So yes, being a role model for some, and I know I am a role model for some out there because I've been told that I serve as a role model. And basically, one of the reasons that I'm going to do the masters and am setting up this foundation, it's not because I love it so much, as in it's a lot of work, but yes, I am curious, so that does help. And I don't mind learning, so that does help too. But it's also because I don't want anyone out there to go and have to deal with the same things I had to deal with growing up, and even just recently. And by using my knowledge and experience and training others, supporting others, guiding others through this world, which is different for the neurotypical people versus the neurodivergent people. So let's say for most of the people, and yes, that's changing actually, the way that people are thinking, it's catching up nowadays. So there are more and more and more neurodivergent, so wired differently, thinking differently than other people. But because of it, like I said, they're very often hypersensitive, and that does mean that they need to take a break and slow down. There is also another reason, and that has to do with me. Well, there are multiple reasons which actually have to do with me. So first of all, it's about sharing my dream with you, talking about how important it is to focus on purpose. So when you say I choose purpose, you choose something that's important for you. I chose it as in I want to go live because I know there's someone out there who needs to hear it. But I also want to get across that when you say I choose purpose, that you are going to go into a different state of mind, really thinking like, hey, what's important to me? A while ago, I told you that nowadays I'm considered a senior, 55 plus. And well, it has its advantages. It also has its downsides. So it doesn't mean that I'm retired or anything. It doesn't mean that I'm, well, that's not entirely true. I would wanted to say I'm walking with a cane. Well, I don't walk with a cane, but I do walk with crutches. So yes, there are things which are linked to the age, but it's also an advantage because I've seen certain things change. I've lived through certain things. And like I said, I can prevent other people from going down the same rabbit hole, and especially the length of the rabbit hole. So what's your purpose? Just think about it. What's the one thing that you say, this is what I live for? or this is my dream, this is what I want to accomplish. Write it down. And when you do so, then maybe you can wonder if you might be a role model for others, and if so, for who, or for who would you like to be? Maybe you're a big sister or a big brother, or you as parent with children, you want to serve as a role model. Maybe you are a teacher. So just think about it. And then there is a third reason. This might actually be the most important one of all. Your brain reacts to what you teach it. And if I teach my brain that I won't go live on the weekends, preferably on Friday, but at least during the weekend, and that's why I started with Monday today for me is not a weekday, it's a weekend day, because it's the birthday of our king. And so I still am within the norm of weekends. On the other hand, I also am aware that there's a party going on right now in the background. Unfortunately for me, because the neighbor and I have been texting back and forth, it's not as loud as when I started, but I'm not entirely sure when he's going to turn up the volume, if he's going to turn up the volume, because he told me it's going to be at a normal level. So that means that I know I shouldn't postpone things I can do now. And I talk about this more often during my life. Don't postpone what you can do now. And it's one of the things that, especially when we talk about doing things with purpose, I keep reminding myself of. So when I woke up today, and I actually slept for a long time. So I fell asleep in the middle of the night, which most of you do. And then I woke up for a moment in the afternoon. I fed the cat. I took a bathroom break, drank a little something, and then I realized that I was still very tired and my heart was pounding through my body. Apparently that means that the adrenaline is slowly disappearing. And if I interrupt that process, then that's when I just keep whacking everything off the shelves, the table. I knock things over. It's not a good moment to interrupt the process. It's sort of like being in a deep sleep state. So I slept on, and then it was evening when I woke up again, and I was like, okay, there's one thing I need to do. I need to go live first before my energy has run out. So here I am talking to you. There was also another variable which had to do with midnight. So there are some things that I do on a daily basis. One is the 5 to Thrive from Brendan. The other one is Duolingo. And nowadays there's also a third one, which is on LinkedIn, doing specific games. And every now and then I skip them, not because I skip them on purpose, but because I forget them. So it's past the time that I can actually do it, or because I'm asleep. You don't want to know how often that happens, that I actually doze off. Now, going back to my purpose and the foundation. Of course, in order to have people find me and also be interested, there's this live, which is a weekly live. There are the posts I do on Instagram, linked to Facebook, and also to Threads. There's LinkedIn, and I'm still getting used to using LinkedIn. So sometimes I respond to someone else, like for instance, Evan Carmichael. He's the YouTube expert out there, and he's got a wicked sense of humor. So he also has a nickname for me. So yes, I like to post content from Evan if I think like, oh, this is a good one. and then I'll put my own thoughts with it as well. But there's also one other thing which I haven't done in a while, which is called a blog post. And a number of lives have already been about behind the scenes. And this one is what I'm going to do is also related to behind the scenes, which is about setting up the foundation, but also getting the business owners to come in and understand how to optimize their business. And let me tell you a little secret. It all starts with connection. Connection as in being understood, as in, yes, communication is a challenge. Patience is a challenge. But if you connect to people and you have them co-create, people support what they create. No, not my phrase. It's actually Brendan's. But then you know the importance of actually being heard as a team member and not assuming that you are being heard just because you're the business owner or the manager. And having been an employee for 2 decades in various companies, seeing all these kinds of reorganization over and over and over again, I know what it's like to be on the receiving end. And that's also why I'm fighting really hard for people who think a little differently, who perceive things a little differently, who get tired more easily because of stimulants and need some downtime and not just be on the clock from 9 to 5. Because if they're not on the clock, they basically can do more than other people can on the clock. And you would be surprised with what they can do for you. But on the other hand, them being creative and working within the lines and doing so at fixed hours, that's actually also the downside, plus perfectionism. And a lot of us actually also deal with the hypermobility syndrome. So that also means that we need more time because our body takes time to absorb things because the body and the brain work together. And well, that's why I fall asleep so easily and sleep those long hours. So I've got this handout. And since I'm talking to a lot of people, I also talk about, okay, what would you like to change in that handout? But that handout is meant for the business owners as to how can they improve things with their team. And it's thinking about what's not adding up in my business. What is not going at the rate or the speed that I expected it to be. And usually it has to do with they might know what they're after, but people in their team don't know because they don't see the need to communicate it. Or they just give the assignment and then they expect them to follow it. And I can tell you, especially when we're talking about changing management, it's not the way it works. So then when you talk to them about it, it's like, well, I've always done it like this. They have to do it too. That's not working either. So we're also talking about what are your own inner thoughts, your own things that you tell yourself. And then last but not least, let's talk about communication. So is it just you talking or is it two people talking? And when two people are talking, do you actually pay attention or are you somewhere else with your thoughts? That one is so immensely important. So yes, I've got some guidelines which have to do with micro meetings and being open and respectful. But I also talk about the KPIs and having your team members follow the KPIs, but then related to their assignments and what they do for and in your business. And then, of course, the middle part has to do with what do you believe to be true? And can this be adjusted or not? And when you are like, oh, this sounds like something I could use, then make sure to look at that description because I will make sure there's a link so you can get the handout where I've actually described this. You can download it for free. And if you want some support, then see how we can get a meeting together. So once I have your email address, then I can find you. You can send to me reaching out to you for that meeting. And then in 40 minutes, because we are going to teach you how to work with those micro meetings, and that means preparation. You look at that handout by setting up that free meeting with me. You also get to go through all those things, so you really think about it. So if you're not going through it, I'm not going to talk to you. That basically is how it works. We want to use our time the best way we can. And then when we've gone through it, I've talked to you about it, there's going to be a recording. And if you want that one, then there's a bonus. If you want that one and you purchase it, then you also get one for your team, which of course is linked to your own handout. And so that way, you know what needs to improve when it comes to KPIs and communication, but they also understand where you are coming from. And that's what we want. We want things from both parties. We want them to be aligned. We want them to be connected, so the two of you are connected. And I will guarantee you that when you start using this, really using this, then things will change. Things will change when it comes to how you look at things, but also with what's happening within your organization. And the end result will be growth. Growth mentally, on your level, your team's level, but also when it comes to your business, simply because you are more aligned. Now, having said so, if you want to be part of setting up these parks, then check out that handout as well, or just find me and send me a message and say, hey, I want to be part of this too. I want to support this goal. And then tell me why you want to support this goal. Now, of course, it might be that you are one of those people out there, the neurodivergents. You are like, oh, finally, someone understands me. Well, if you're one of those, again, you can support me too by giving me your input, your ideas. And you won't be just supporting me, but all of those out there who need a fighting chance to actually be seen, heard, understood, appreciated for their unique skills. And if you are one of those people, or the young ones out there with those unique skills, and maybe you're my age and you have those unique skills too, and you want to support your children or your friends or whoever you see needs it, then reach out to me as well, because together we can make a difference.